I got all the presents on Christmas. I never had an annoying sibling to deal with. My parents spoiled me rotten. And then Brienne came along. I was 11 when she was born. Right away, I couldn't stand her. My parents paid so much attention to her. She cried all the time. It was so annoying. If I complained I couldn't sleep because of the noise, my mom was just like, she's a baby. That's what babies do. Well then, babies were the worst. To make matters harder, my parents thought Brienne was perfect. They were always talking about how beautiful she was, how smart. If you call crying and drooling smart, I guess. They went nuts the first time she smiled, and when she started goo-goo gaga-ing, they took like 8,000 videos. Meanwhile, everything I did was wrong. Erica, don't run in the house. You'll wake the baby. Erica, don't talk so loud. Don't stand so close to the crib. Go play outside. If they didn't want me anymore, why not just dump me at an orphanage and be done with it? Then they could spend all their time with their precious Brienne. It got to the point where just the sight of my baby sister made me furious. Even my teachers asked me about Brienne. I couldn't get a break from people talking about her. At Brienne's first Christmas, she got dozens of presents. What did I get? Socks. Whenever I wanted to talk to my mom after school, she was always fussing over Brienne. I seriously had fantasies about taking Brienne into the woods and leaving her there. But then something happened. Brienne was over 2, and she still wasn't talking. My parents started freaking out that something was wrong with her. They talked to the pediatrician. He did some tests that determined Brienne could understand words, she just didn't speak. The doctor said some kids start talking late and not to worry about it. But my parents were definitely worried. And as much as I hated that now they were paying even more attention to Brienne, I loved that Brienne wasn't so perfect anymore. One day, I was watching her while my parents were downstairs. She started babbling. Shh, I told her without thinking. She looked at me with wide eyes. Don't do that, I told her. Don't make that noise or your head will fall off. I mimed her head popping off. At first, I wasn't sure she understood, but the next time I caught her babbling, I said the same thing, and this time she started crying. It happened a few more times, and each time I'd tell Brienne a horrible story about what would happen if she talked. I told her I had special powers that let me do it, but that she'd be in big trouble if she tried. I knew it was horrible of me, but I was just so sick of her getting all the attention. The stories got worse. I told her Mom and Dad wouldn't love her anymore if she talked. I told her they would give her back to the hospital. One day, Brienne said what sounded like Dada, and without thinking, I slapped her. I didn't hit her that hard, but I was still shocked at myself. Then she started wailing. I went to my room, heart pounding, thinking if she were ever going to start talking, this would be the time so she could tell on me. But she didn't. Before I knew it, Brienne was turning 3 and she still hadn't said a word. Now my parents were really freaking out. They took her to a bunch of specialists and were trying all kinds of weird homeopathic crystal alignment stuff to try to get Brienne to talk. The thing was, I was freaking out too. Over the past year, I'd gotten over a lot of my resentment toward Brienne. I was in high school now and had plenty to keep me busy. What did I care if my parents were obsessed with the baby? I even sort of liked Brienne now. She didn't cry as much, and she was really cute. But she wasn't talking, and it was all my fault. I filled her head with all those horrible stories, and I'd traumatized her for life. My parents delayed Brienne's preschool enrollment. They looked like they never slept. They were always on the internet looking for solutions, for new doctors to try. The guilt began to eat away at me. I needed to fix this. Brienne, I said one day when we were alone. Brienne, it's okay to talk. I was just being silly when I said your head would fall off. Can you say Mama? Dada? Brienne just stared at me. Brienne, please talk. Just say one word. If you don't start talking, they're going to take you to more doctors. That's not good, right? You don't like doctors. Nothing. Brienne, your head won't fall off, I insisted a little louder. Brienne started to cry. After that, I researched how to encourage kids to talk. I practiced with Brienne whenever I could. I showed her pictures and magazines and repeated the words over and over, but nothing came of it. I was so scared now that I had trouble sleeping. Mom and Dad had just taken Brienne to another specialist, and they wouldn't even tell me what the woman had said. What's going to happen if Brienne doesn't start talking? I asked Mom. To my shock, she started crying. She couldn't even answer the question. I realized I was the worst person in the world. I'd hurt Brienne and my parents. I was a terrible daughter. No wonder they'd liked Brienne better than me. I went upstairs shaking with anger and fear. I found Brienne and showed her a magazine picture of a cat. "Cat," I said. "Say cat." Over and over I pointed at the cat and repeated the word, but Brienne just stared at me. Then she smiled a little and clapped her hands, and I lost it. "Just say cat!" I screamed at her. "How hard is it? Just say one stupid word, Brienne. What are you, an idiot?" I kept screaming at her to talk until I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. My mom burst into the room and found Brienne crying and me shouting at her. Mom pulled me away. "Erica, what has gotten into you?" "She won't talk," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Erica, she won't talk," I interrupted, "and it's all my fault." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. So I told the whole story, all the awful things I'd said to Brienne over the past year. "I don't know why I did it," I sobbed. "You just thought she was so perfect, and at first I thought it was funny, but now she won't talk, even though I tried to tell her the truth." Mom took me aside and calmed me down. "Erica, Brienne's last specialist diagnosed her with a developmental disability. It's not your fault she can't talk." I tried to breathe slowly and listen to what she was saying, but my heart was still racing. It's not? No, it was very wrong of you to say those things to your sister, but that's not the reason. I wasn't the reason? I will never forget the feeling of relief her words made me feel. I was haunted by guilt for a very long time. I always thought it was me, but I was still worried. What's going to happen? Will she ever talk? They're hopeful that with some therapy she'll talk someday. We don't know much yet. "I'll try to help," I offered tentatively. "Like if there are exercises we need to do with her or something. I don't know if she'll ever trust me, but..." "That might be good for both of you," Mom said, "if you can promise me that you'll be kind to her." I said I promise, and I hugged my mom tight. And I've done my best to keep my word. Brienne and I might never be best friends, but I'm trying to be a better big sister to her now.
Can you imagine what it's like to be so pretty that people actually bully you because of it? Most of you are probably thinking that being pretty is an amazing thing, but just wait until you hear my story. I'm Jasmine, and I'm 16 years old. And yep, I am indeed named after Princess Jasmine, because the moment I was born, my dad said I looked exactly like her. So, growing up, I was naturally very pretty, and the older I got, the more the boys chased me. But I was oblivious to this. Just because I was pretty didn't mean I was arrogant about it. In fact, I was a very caring kid. I always liked to help people in my class and really didn't care about the way people looked. I wanted to help everyone. One time in 3rd grade, there were 3 boys fighting, and I went to help them. But to my complete shock, they were fighting over me. Our teacher eventually broke up the fight and had to split them all up and make them sit on the opposite side of the classroom, away from me. I was so shocked. Why would people fight over me? Well, by the time I was in 5th grade, I'd gotten even prettier, and at one point, there were 5 guys fighting over me. One day, 2 of those guys, Jack and Tyler, were both running towards me from opposite sides of the playground. I was just standing there watching them come towards me, and I panicked and quickly jumped out of the way. They both ended up bashing into each other and fell over. Honestly, it was so funny. I helped them up, but inside, I was dying of laughter. Most girls would probably love getting attention like that, but it drove me crazy. I just wanted people to like me for who I was, not because I was pretty. Even though I got tons of attention from boys, the girls didn't like me. There was one girl called Mia who hated me so much, she actually bullied me. She would always go out of her way to do horrible things to me. Like this one time where she jumped on me in gym class and broke my right arm. She pretended it was an accident, but I know she deliberately did it. And obviously, I use my right arm for everything. So it was torture. I cried so much because for months I couldn't write anything. And writing was my most favorite thing in the world. And that wasn't the only horrible encounter with Mia. One time I was at the park with my big brother, and he left me alone on the swings so he could go hang out with his friends. As soon as he was out of sight, I saw Mia heading towards me. She looked angry, and I quickly closed my eyes because I was so scared. I thought she was going to hit me. But suddenly, I heard someone running, and I opened my eyes just in time to see my brother grab her arm to stop her from hitting me. He was protecting me, but then he took it too far. He hit her in the face so hard, he knocked her front tooth out. She was screaming and crying, and my brother just grabbed me and made me run out of the park with him. After that, Mia didn't bother me anymore. I moved up to middle school and never saw her again, but my life didn't get much better. You see, at my new school, the uniforms were so ugly. I went from being the pretty girl to a complete tomboy. We had to wear these red polo shirts with baggy nude pants. Honestly, it was not a good look for me. Sure, I was glad not to be the girl guys were fighting over anymore, but I didn't like feeling ugly in the uniform. Then, when we had the school dance, we were finally allowed to wear whatever we wanted. I decided to wear my favorite little black dress that showed off my curvy body. As soon as I walked through the doors into the dance, all eyes were on me. I couldn't believe how much of a difference my outfit could make. All the guys kept trying to get my attention, but I just wanted to dance. It was such a fun night, but the next day was crazy. I got to class and we had to hand in our essays. I went to give mine to the teacher, and when I was walking back to my seat, a girl called Paloa stopped me and said, "Jasmine, everyone knows your melons are fake. You had plastic surgery, didn't you?" She said it so loud, and everyone started laughing, even my friends. I was so embarrassed and just ran out of there crying. Why would she say something like that? To make matters even worse, when I eventually came back to my desk, I noticed someone had messed with my artwork. I love drawing, especially Dragon Ball characters, and I'd drawn a Goku that morning. Someone had ruined it by drawing fake boobs, and then underneath they'd written, "You are so fake." I honestly wanted to run out of there and never go back. People were being so mean. Suddenly, a guy called Peter, who was always quite horrible to me, grabbed the drawing and ripped it up. I didn't understand how people could treat me like this. The rest of my middle school life was pretty much the same. I felt miserable, and I thought finally high school would be better. But on my first day, I was sitting alone and I heard a group of girls whispering about me. They were all really pretty and popular, and I tried to ignore them, but two of them came over to me and sat on either side of me. I felt terrified, but suddenly one of them said, "Oh my God, you're so pretty. How come you're eating all alone? You can come sit at our table because you're pretty enough." After my middle school experience, I was so happy that people were being nice to me again. Soon I started hanging out with the pretty girls all the time, and the leader of the group, Ashley, she asked me if I had a boyfriend. And when I told her I didn't, she laughed and said, "Don't you worry, we'll find you one." But I didn't want them to find me one, because the more I hung out with them, the more I realized that the guys they liked were total troublemakers, and I wasn't interested in those type of guys at all. After a few weeks of hanging out with them, I realized they were too much. I didn't want to spend my days gossiping and being surrounded by drama. Just because I was a pretty girl didn't mean I had to hang out with the pretty girls. I heard there was a new kid at school, and the girls were all making fun of him for some reason. I didn't like what they were saying about him. And so the next day, I decided to go introduce myself and see if he was okay. Well, I have no idea why people were making fun of him. He was gorgeous. Drop dead gorgeous. But he was so shy, and so I just sat on a table near him and stared at him nonstop. I eventually plucked up the courage to go and introduce myself. "Hi, I'm Jasmine," I said. "Nice to meet you." Then he said, "I'm Chris. Hi." And after that, we got chatting, and I couldn't believe how much we had in common. I could see everyone staring at us chatting, but I didn't care. Chris said he'd worried that no one would want to be his friend, and I told him that I would be. After that, we started hanging out every day, and I quickly fell for him. He was kinda nerdy, but I liked that about him. One day, before Valentine's, he asked me what my favorite candy was. Then on Valentine's Day, he surprised me with flowers, a box of chocolates, and a teddy bear. Then a few days after, he gave me another surprise. He'd ordered all my favorite candy, Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, and Airheads. I was so happy. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for me. And he wasn't interested in me just because I was pretty. He actually cared about me. We started dating soon after that, and then I had my first kiss! It was kind of funny because I'd never kissed anyone before, so I had no idea what I was doing. But it felt nice. And after a while, I really got the hang of it. And now we're so in love. It's been 7 months since we started dating, and I never could have imagined my life could be so good now. We're even planning to get married in the future. I know we're still young, but when you know, you know.